Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're talking about the Armalite Super SASS rifle. This is one of my personal rifles and one I'm really fond of. Before we get into the SASS program, I want to talk a little bit about the company Armalite. Now, as you all know, the Armalite was the originator of the AR10. That's where Gene Stoner worked in the 50s. Well, the name has gone through several changes. The name, he had intellectual property and so forth. In the late 1980s, Mark Westrom. Mark Westrom was a former Colonel, U.S. Army Ordnance Officer. He did a lot of work with Rock Island Arsenal, and he had done a lot of work on the M16 programs themselves. He's done a lot of very interesting work throughout the years. And he's still done work with Rock Island Arsenal after he left the military. Mark purchased a company called Eagle Arms. Eagle Arms is located out of Geneseo, Illinois. They manufactured AR-type rifles under the EA name. He had done some parts as well for other companies. Around the early 1990s, he had the opportunity to purchase the trademark Armalite. And along with the Armalite was its logos, its name, as well as some intellectual property, not really all that much. But just before he got into the procurement of the Armalite name, he had been working on his own version of the AR-10. Now, Reed Knight had already released his SR-25 around 93, in that era in there. When Mark was looking at designing his own AR-10 type rifle, he was looking at what his options were. His options were, one, he was to make it off of the original AR-10 drawings from the 50s. And that really wasn't going to fly, just due to the fact that the gun looked very strange by current trends. And there's a lot of changes that have been going on as far as the flat top receivers and so forth, turning the rifle into more of a dedicated rifle or a sniper type rifle. Two was to come up with his own design. Or three, sort of piggyback off of one that was just being released, and that was the SR-25 by Knight's Armament. Now, if you look at the SR-25, there was a lot of similarities between the original AR-10, but it had a lot to do with the M16A2. There was a big push to have as much parts commonality with the M16A2 as possible. So you have what was called the SR-25. Now, first off, Mark knew that Reed Knight was going to charge vast amount of money. It's very expensive to buy parts, to get anything out of there. Now, he knew if he was to take the SR-25 and to look at the base parts, the major components, he would already have a customer base for that. The original SR-25 utilized Armalite original magazines, the original ones from the 1950s. However, due to the assault weapon ban, Knight's was no longer able to manufacture those for commercial sales, and certainly the ones from the 50s pretty much dried up. So Mark decided he wanted his customers to be able to have a 20-round magazine. And Mark was very fond of the M14 magazine due to the fact that it was extremely durable. In fact, Mark felt that it was more durable than the SR-25 magazines or the original AR-10 magazines. And due to the extremely large numbers of these magazines that were available, you'd be able to convert this to be used in his rifle. And at this time, it was called the AR-10 because he now had the Armalite trademark. His AR-10 would be able to utilize a modified M14 magazine, which basically what he would do is he would cut a notch in it for the magazine release. He would modify the feed angles of the feed lips, and he would also change the follower. He also made a modification to the follower in the rear so it would lock open the last shot. And all you had to do was take these magazines, send them into Armalite, and they would convert them. And because these magazines were, assault weapon ban, you could make as many as you want, and they were perfectly legal. So he built his based off of the M14 magazine instead of the SR-25. At that time, I probably would say right up through the mid-2000s, Armalite manufactured more AR-10 rifles or 7.62 versions of this rifle than anybody else in the industry. And Mark also, as a former infantry officer, he wanted to get on some military contracts, and he knew that his rifles, with the accuracy and the precision that he had, he was ready to compete for the big time. So that gives a little bit of a background on Mark Westrom and what he had done. But now we're going to go forward to 2004. Early on in the global war on terror, there was definitely a need that came out to have a new sniper rifle. Even within the sniper community, they realized that there was a much bigger benefit of having a semi-automatic sniper rifle with a 20-round magazine that was just as accurate pretty much as most bolt-action rifles. That you're able to engage your targets, you would be able to engage at least double. Or at least 50% to 75% more speed and target engagement than you would with a bolt-action rifle. So that enables you to be able to engage multiple targets very quickly without having to readjust your sight, without having to manually work the bolt, being able to use the sound suppressors. It was basically a win-win situation. And also at that time, during the Global War on Terror 2004, the Navy was already looking at a rifle called the Mark 11, which was an SR-25 based rifle that was being used as a sniper rifle, with the Navy SEALs and with SOCOM. And the rifle was extremely successful. The longer engagements you had in Afghanistan, just using anything as a sniper rifle, they had many tests that would show that if you were to have a guy with a bolt action versus the semi-automatic, that the guy with the semi-automatic could engage 2 to 3 times faster and that many more targets than the guy with a bolt action. And what little difference there was in accuracy, whether you have a bullet that touches each other, at 100 yards, you have 5 bullets that touch each other. That's really irrelevant when it comes to engaging human targets out to full 500 yards. That what little benefit that you would get from the bolt action rifle was not enough to say that we would take the bolt action over. It just wasn't. There's just so much more benefit to the semi-automatic rifle. The M110 trials had several companies that were involved with it. Of course, Knights. Knights was a given, being the fact they already had the government contract for the Mark 11. You also had DPMS, you had Armalite, and you had JP Enterprises, and you had Remington. And when it all came down to it, there was a winner, and unfortunately it was not Armalite. It is the rifle that we see here, which is the M110 service rifle manufactured by Knights Armament. To discuss a little bit of the rifle that was entered by Armalite, there is a specific set of requirements that the rifle did have. So the rifle that Armalite actually showed, you're going to see some photographs of this rifle. I was the first person to put any photographs up of the Armalite SASS in some articles I did for Small Arms Review, Small Arms Defense Journal, and nobody else has ever done it since. So what you're seeing here is probably your first time ever seeing a picture of Armalite's entry. So as you're going to see from the picture, you're going to see a 6-position stock with a Voltorque clubfoot. The gun is in Coyote Tan, which is what it was required to be. The trigger was a Chip McCormick 2-stage trigger, so we wanted to have a 2-stage precision trigger. Now, Armalite had some of their own makeshift front and rear sights. They were not impressive, I will give you that, but when Mark did this, he wanted everything to be done by Armalite. He didn't want to use any more subcontractors than he actually had to. Now, the handguard was a free-floating handguard that was quad 1913 rails. It was manufactured by Armalite, and of course for a precision rifle you want to have the ability to have a free-floated barrel, which gives you most of your accuracy. You have the harmonics not interfered with, and that gives you all that precision accuracy, which this AR10 system, or the Armalite system, was known for, is for precision accuracy. Specifically the AR10 in the 50s, it was known for its accuracy. So it was chambered for 7.62 by 51 millimeter, 20-inch barrel. It's a 11 1/4 inch twist. The barrel had basically a 7 to 10,000 service life if it was taken care of properly. There's a gas valve located in the front of the Armalite SASS that was 3 positions. You had suppressed, normal, and complete gas shutoff. The muzzle device was set up for a surefire flash hider. It did utilize the modified M14 magazine. Now, something else you have to understand was there was no standard magazine. Even by today's standards, there is no standardized 7.62 magazine. You have the SR-25. That specific rifle utilized that magazine. The new M110C utilizes a proprietary H&K magazine, so there is no factory standard or industry standard magazine for as far as military use. And I will say again, Mark Westrom believed that the M14 magazine, being of steel construction, was far stronger than the aluminum ones or even the steel ones that were being manufactured by Knights at the time. The optic it chose was the same optic that was used on the Mark 11. It was a Leupold 3.5 by 10 match scope. Now, additional $1,000 was added to this gun by request of the military for as far as having a hardening polymer case, which had several things. It had magazines, it had spare parts, it had cleaning kits. It had all the things that were set up in the requirements of the SASS program. Well, September 28, 2005, the contract was awarded to Knights. So, I guess it wasn't really surprised to see that Knights would win. Knights has had a very long relationship with special operations, with SOCOM, with Naval Surface Warfare Center. They were also a U.S. government manufacturer. There's a lot of requirements that come up when you have U.S. government contracts. There's even for your facility itself, it has to have certain requirements that, Armalite probably didn't fit a lot of that. Armalite was still a very small business compared to what Knights was. But it did not end there for the SASS. Armalite introduced in the SHOT Show 2006 what they referred to as the Super SASS, which you see here. Basically what the Super SASS was, it was a combination of lessons learned from the SASS rifle and to make another rifle that had many modifications to make the rifle that much better than what he originally had. And quite frankly, if you were to compare this particular rifle here to any SR-25, any LMT, or anything that I've shot along those lines, which you would consider high-end sniper rifles, this one is right up there for as far as the group size. They're all about the same. They're all well sub MOA. This particular one here was just under an inch with the suppressor on, with M118 LR ammunition. If I probably would have taken the suppressor off and would have had some 168, I would have expected that to go, get a little bit tighter also. But this rifle is up to par with anything else that's out there. So as I said, it was introduced at the SHOT Show in 2006, and incorporated many of the features from the XM10. Now, looking at from back to front, we're going to see we have a Magpul PRS stock that came on it. Now, the original rifle utilized a telescopic stock. When they went to the 20-inch precision rifle, they decided to go with the Magpul stock, and I have to say the Magpul stock, in my opinion, is the finest precision rifle stock available for the AR-type rifle. Now, it is heavy. We have to give you that. It is a heavy stock. You do have an adjustment for the cheek weld on here, adjustable by a dial here. You have a dial in the rear, which gives you some adjustment to your length of pull on the rear. You slide off this cover under here. You have a 1913 rail to install a monopod. So, this is fully adjustable to get your cheek up to however you have your optics set up. Upper and lower receivers. Now, both of them are 7075 T6 aircraft grade aluminum forgings. Early AR10s. This is a very interesting piece of information here. Now, all of you guys have heard me talk about how I'm not very fond of the forward assist on the AR10. It wasn't supposed to be there. Now, Mark Westrom, just like Gene Stoner, just like Carl Lewis, just like Reed Knight, they knew the rifle was not designed to have a forward assist, and it shouldn't have been there. So the first rifles that Mark Westrom produced did not have a forward assist. I do have one of his early rifles that I got around the year, I'd say 2000, when he didn't have those on there. Well, he got a lot of feedback from customers. Now, they wanted it. Why do they want it? We have no idea. The M16 has it, so therefore it has to be needed, so therefore it should be on this rifle. I think Mark just got tired of fighting City Hall, so he finally said, fine, I'll put one on it. So this particular one here has the forward assist added to it. You'll see we have a fire cartridge case deflector. We have ambi safety on here. We have standard location for magazine release. Now, if you look at the way he did his lower receivers, that is Mark at Armalite, he went with more of the M16A2 type features. If you look at the geography on this, or if you look at the features of it, it looks more like that of a M16A2 compared to like an SR25. The SR25 has more of its own look to it. This gives you more of a service rifle or a current service rifle look to it. As I said, we have the M14 type magazine. The bolt carrier group is one of the parts that was manufactured to be compatible with that of the SR25. The upper and lower receiver, partially, I would say, were compatible, but due to the fact they used the M14 magazine, there were some cuts that were up in the upper receiver as well as the magazine weld that did not make them common with the SR25 because of the different magazine. So the upper and lower receiver were not for as far as the interface for the magazine, but if you look at the back, it was very much similar to that of the SR25. Now, looking at your trigger mechanism, you have a Armalite manufactured two-stage match trigger. It's a very, very nice trigger. It's got a little more spring to it than like a Geisley would, but it was a very, very effective trigger. Getting back to the bolt carrier group. The bolt carrier group is compatible with that of the SR25. You could drop one in, drop one out, the other one in. This particular one here has the forward assist notches, obviously because it utilizes the forward assist. The earlier ones that were made by Armalite did not have forward assist notches because it didn't need them. The bolts are very, very well made. In fact, in all the times I've been to Armalite and talked with Mark and talked with customers, I've never heard of a bolt breaking on an AR10, an Armalite. I think I've never heard it on an SR25 or on the LMT either. These are just very, very well-built components. Now we take a look at the handguard we have here. Again, we have a quad 1913 rail handguard. Now, I'm sure that the current production ones, probably do utilize the T-Mod and then, of course, the M-Lock. Now, let me say that this rifle here, I purchased this one in 2008 or 2009, around that time period. Again, that was when Mark Westrom owned the company. Now, Mark Westrom had sold the company, and once he sold it, I sort of lost track with the company. It was very different. We'll get into that later. But the rifle that we're seeing here is an original rifle. This was when I know for sure these rifles were made awesome. So the handguard, Mil Standard 1913 quad rails, completely free-floated. Attaches from the back here to the barrel nut. We have a rifle-length gas system. For as far as backup sights, the sights that I have on here are the Knights Micro. Because they sit down really, really flat, and when you have your scope mounted on here, it doesn't interfere with the scope either. Getting back to the back here as well, we have a PRI gas buster charging handle on here too. All these rifles come with that because of the fact that we have on this barrel an adjustment valve. Now this sort of changes up a little bit from the one on the XM10. This one here only has a normal and a suppressed position. And I have to say, as much as I've used this rifle, this thing has never carbon froze on me, so that's pretty cool. A lot of these ones, you'll actually get carbon freeze on there, and it'll cause problems later on down the road. You know, you really have to get something on there to break that carbon freeze. This didn't have that problem. It does come with 3 panels on the lower here. We do have a Harris bipod on here, and this is on a arms throw lever mount that we have on here. And Harris bipods are probably one of the staples of most of the U.S. military, but you'll see everybody using everything. You'll see Atlas, you'll see pretty much anything. The way the rifles were to leave Knights, they would have Harris bipods on them. The way they would leave Crane for some of the other versions of the rifle, they would have Harris bipods. So I just stuck with that. Now the barrel. The barrel is extremely unique on this sucker. Again, we have a 20-inch barrel, rifle-length gas system. It's a very heavy barrel made out of 416R stainless steel. It has a 1 in 10-inch twist right hand with a triple-lapped ceramic-coated barrel. All that means is this is an extremely accurate barrel. Now, pretty much the military staple when it comes to sound suppressors is generally the Knights armament. In the case of SOCOM, the 5.56 Mark 12 utilized in Allen Engineering or an OpSync. But this particular one is the Silencer Co. I've been using a lot of Silencer Co. products, and I have to say I've been very, very impressed. This particular one I've been utilizing on 300 Blackout, 308, up to 300 Win Mag. I've been very, very happy with it. Now, the suppressor is a Silencer Co. Omega 300, or obviously 30 caliber. Utilizes the ACR brake. This will go from caliber 5.7 to 300 Win Mag. Has an overall length of 7.9 inches and weighs 14 ounces. Has a 1.56 inch diameter, and your basic decibel is about 133.9 decibels. Now it's manufactured out of titanium, stellite, and stainless steel. Now the MSRP is $1,130, and I have to say it's worth every penny. These are excellent sound suppressors. I've utilized these on many, many rifles, and you're going to see from the video that you're going to see very shortly how well it works with the rifle. The scope utilized on this is a basic military scope. This is pretty much one of the ones that's used on a regular basis for the bolt action as well as the semi-automatics. It's the Leupold Mark IV 3.5 to 10. It has an illuminated reticle with 11 increments of brightness. It also has a 7.62 bullet drop compensator. This particular one's compensator is for the M118 ammunition, which is a 168 grain load. You can also get a turret that is for the M118LR, which is a 175 grain open tip match. So we'll take it apart. Just take a little bit of a look inside. Just to remove the sound suppressor, you unlock the collar. Let me remove that. As you see here, we have the ACR flash suppressor. Now, a lot of these rifles, they tend to want to use muzzle brakes on them. I'm not one of those. I prefer to have the flash suppressor on here. I think anytime you look at any kind of a military type rifle, you look what's more important to you to enhance recoil reduction or flash. Well, I think any soldier would say they want to reduce flash. There's not enough muzzle blast on here to really cause you that much of a problem. Now, looking at the magazine. Now, we had a couple different generations of magazines. During the ban, we had, basically, they were standard U.S. government or standard M14 magazines that were modified. Well, then came 2004, was the sunset of the assault weapon ban. Now, Armalite was able to manufacture their own magazines with several enhancements. Those main enhancements were, as you see, there's a spine here. And on top of this spine here, you have a follower that engages the bolt release. The original magazines that were modified, you didn't have the spine in the back. You had a plunger in here that would push in as you would load your rounds in. Then when it come up to the last shot, the plunger would stick out and it would lift upward on the bolt lock. So this is an enhanced magazine. It's manufactured specifically for this rifle, with everything being optimal on it. One of the areas where I felt Mark Westrom was sort of ahead of Knight's Armament was his development of his bolt catch and his gas tube. Now, as we spoke, the SR-25 was supposed to have 80% parts commonality with the M16A2. When Mark Westrom built this rifle, he was not concerned about any kind of parts compatibility. He wanted to make the best 7.62 that he could. And right off the bat, he knew that the standard M16 or 5.56 bolt catch was not nearly hefty enough to halt the heavy mass of the 7.62 caliber bolt carrier group. So right off the bat, he made an enhanced or a much heavier bolt catch. The other thing that he did was he realized that if you look at the gas system that was on the AR10, that if you were to use a standard M16 gas tube, that it was too short. It didn't sit all the way back in the carrier key, so you could have issues with gases that were leaking. So he had a special gas tube that was made that was longer, specifically for the 7.62 system. So we can see here is the two-stage trigger. This is Armalite, very, very well polished on the top here. They're very similar in feel to the LMT for as far as the way you have a little bit more spring, more on the first stage. But once you get to that second stage, you have a really crisp break. Very nice. Now, for as far as the buffer is concerned, you're utilizing the exact same receiver extension as you do on a standard M16 type rifle, but you have to use a shorter buffer and a more powerful recoil spring because of the 7.62 caliber. And we can see as the magazine's inserted, we can see how that bolt catch lifts right up. With this design, you already had the trip built into the magazine. With the original magazines, you had a spring-loaded detent that popped out, which lifted up on the bolt catch. Now, what makes this rifle upper receiver not compatible with that of the SR25 is due to this cut right in through here. With this cut in here, it makes sure that there's no over travel of the M14 magazine. Due to the fact that it's cut out for the M14 magazine, it will not fit the SR25 type magazine. So that's why the upper receiver is not compatible. Now, the new AR10Bs, that are utilized with the Armalite today, they use the SR25 type magazines. To my knowledge, they're no longer manufacturing the original Mark Westrom M14 magazines. They're all using the SR25 type magazines. So, of course, a current production upper receiver from Armalite and lower receiver would be compatible with that of the Knights. This is the gas buster charging handle by PRI. Now, so far as I am concerned, anybody who has a sound suppressor on any AR-type rifle, this is an absolute must-have. This was sold on the original Mark 12s and on the original Mark 11s. If you notice how you have these flares that come down, what this does is it covers up the back of the receiver, so it prevents gas from hitting the operator in the face. If we look in the bottom, we'll see how we have this round cutout here. What that does is it directs the path of the gas right off the side of the rifle rather than back into the shooter's face. And we also have a far more aggressive and more easily to manipulate charging handle latch. Now what we have here is a standard AR10 bolt carrier group. This is compatible with that of the SR25. Unlike the SR25, this utilizes a manganese phosphate instead of a chrome plating. It's basically the exact same design. You have two embedded springs in here. Here you have a large firing pin retaining pin, unlike that of the SR25 that's captive. And the firing pin, another thing that Armalite does on their firing pins that Knights doesn't do is they install a firing pin spring. Now there's a reason for this. The reason was when this rifle was first developed, there was a lot of ammunition that they would have issues with slam fires, meaning just from the inertia of the bolt going forward, the firing pin would tap on the back of the primer and there'd be enough inertia to set the cartridge off. That's because you have primers that were too soft or non-military grade primers. So just to cope with that, to make sure it didn't happen with his guns, Mark Westrom put a firing pin spring on there, so that would ensure that would never happen. And I can tell you, this rifle and other Armalite rifles I have shot any kind of ammunition from hard military primers to soft match primers. I've never had any kind of slam fires with it. Cam pin. If you look at the bolt, now all the Armalite rifles came with the one-piece gas ring as well. Mark Westrom was very fond of these. His 5.56 rifles didn't come with it, but he did prefer them on his 7.62. We pop out our extractor. And when we look at our extractor, we'll see we have a very heavy red buffer. We have the extractor spring, plus we have the donut, the extractor donut, which basically increases your extractor force by a factor of 4. And that's excellent for as far as any of these rifles. I put these on all of my rifles. This is basically insurance. You literally could remove the spring and just put the donut in there, and your weapon would still function without a problem. So quite frankly, your extractor spring is doing very little bit of work. You have a pretty good crud groove right here, as well as you have the a very good strong extractor claw in there as well to engage more of the rim of the cartridge case. See, we have our breech face on here. Very, very, very well made. Mark Westrom did a wonderful job building these things. And, you know, this is a very strong, very durable design. It unfortunately didn't get its due back in the 50s, but it has now. So reassembly, very, very simple. And the bolt carrier groups, just like any mil-spec M16 type, you have a chrome-plated inside the bolt carrier and inside the carrier key. Nice thing about these is you don't have to rotate these a quarter turn. You just drop that right in place. So what's nice about it here is you can push forward in here with your finger to depress that, because you do have the spring tension on there. And that will ensure that it's not going to drop out. Reassembly. Insert our charging handle. Now, looking close, you'll see we have an ambidextrous safety on here. This did not come that way. This is something that I added onto there. I do tend to like this. You know, we have a very short throw lever on here, but you can sweep it down with your right hand if you so chose. We take a look at the opposite side. If we look at our markings on here, we have the Armalite lion. Now, those of you who are familiar with the Armalite logos, the very first Armalite logo was a Pegasus. And then once it was sold the first time, they switched it over to a lion. So he utilizes the Pegasus. That was sort of funny. I always told Mark I like the Pegasus better than I did the lion, but he chose to go with the lion. You can see the bolt catch on here as well is very, very aggressive. So you're definitely not your finger's not going to slide off it as compared to a lot of the other bolt catches that are out there for the AR10s. It's very easily engaged. So what I think we're going to do now is we're going to take the Armalite Super SASS to the range and we're going to see how it shoots. As you saw from the range footage, this rifle was an absolute pleasure to shoot, and I really do enjoy shooting it unsuppressed. In fact, that's the only way I generally shoot it. You know, the ammunition I tested was manufactured by Black Hills. It was both the 168 grain OTM as well as the 175 grain OTM, and the best group that I got with the can on that day was 0.98 inches. Now, this rifle I've had for quite some time, and this rifle has been very well known to do half-inch groups. So that particularly that day, that was just me. But this rifle's capabilities are much better. Of course, back when I first got it, my arthritis was not nearly as bad, so I was a lot more steady myself. So that group definitely doesn't say what the rifle's capable of. That says what I was capable of doing that day. Now, I'm just going to go over some of the statistics for this thing as well. The MSRP for this one is $3,100, and it's manufactured and it is available today. Basically, the only difference you're going to have is instead of utilizing the M14 magazine, you're going to utilize the SR25 type magazine. The muzzle device on here is a 5/8 by 24 thread. It comes with a A2 type compensator on it. An overall length of 41 inches with the stock completely closed, and with the back fully open, you'll have 42 inches. And weighs 11.8 pounds. Now, if you consider what the M14s weigh and what everything else weighs, this weighs about it. This is not designed as a lightweight barrel like the original AR10s were that were 6 pounds. This is a full heavy barrel designed for long range. So for overall performance, this rifle, I'm extremely happy with it. Again, I've had it for quite some time, and this definitely won't be going anywhere in my collection. This rifle shoots very, very well. It's always been reliable. We've never had malfunctions with it whatsoever. This rifle has had foreign military sales. You're going to see a picture of Mark Westrom talking to some Slovakian soldiers, showing him the AR10 when we were in a trade show in Croatia that I was with him at. This rifle has also been purchased by the Brazilian police and was used to guard people during the Olympics that were held in Brazil. So there has been other military contracts. Armalite has also equipped the Canadians with a 7.62 sniper rifle as well. So Armalite has had its fair share of law enforcement and military contracts with the Super SASS rifle. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share. Thank you.